Okay, Sunday, 15th of June, 2025. So Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Study Sunday. Be more. Using old English words for communication. Now, in my journey, in over the course of my journey with regards to languages really, understanding and learning Spanish, I had a growing appreciation for the language. And that spilled over into like an academic appreciation for English as a language, as a subject, to understand and articulate and to really get the nuances. Because what I noticed that to understand, say, the past perfect tense in Spanish, I had to really grasp it in English first to quantify and enumerate in English so I was able to fully understand it in Spanish, therefore communicate better. Interesting. And in the course of doing all this, one thing that someone told me years ago, in fact, was that a lot of the Spanish words are like an elegant version of English. So, for example, obtener in Spanish is like the Latin word obtain. But obtain is a synonym meaning the same as get. Within reason, it's the same. But the difference is the crux of the matter. So every English word has a Latin origin, native word, and an old Germanic word, get and obtain. And the obtain is very similar to the Spanish word. Okay, very nice. Now, years ago, when I was learning about literature and dialogue and writing, in one of the books just up here, actually, oddly enough, it was mentioned that every single word in English has two versions: Latin-based, Germanic-based, synonym, different, same meaning, different origin. Now, through studying and research and understanding more of human nature, anthropology, clients, the language, English and Spanish, I came to an interesting observation that English words of Germanic origin generally are easier to communicate with and to use, more friendlier, more down to earth, shorter syllables, maybe easier to spell, maybe you can argue guttural, as in like vocal sounds of life instead of more fancy sounding words from Latin. And you can go one step further to understand and theorize how language affects how we behave and think. And there's an interesting theory, I forgot what it's called, Waldorf or something thesis. And the idea goes that different languages, because if I remember correctly, different languages are like an evolutionary construction of behaviors and attitudes and cultures and people. And different languages essentially light up different parts of the brain, which therefore we act and behave in different ways. But that's a different interesting topic elsewhere. But Old English words, short, simple, direct, concrete. Latin, longer, abstract, consensual, formal. Even down to the syllables. More syllables. So, for example, obtain, get, information, knowledge, idea. Very nice. So interesting how the brain processes short words faster, less cognitive load, easier, friendlier, more down to earth. And I think if you follow that logic, you could even just use simple guttural noises for communication. Things like that. Very primal noises that I think are a very interesting way of going under the radar, so to speak, and not activating people's fight or flight response when communicating. It's very peaceful, not aggressive tones. It's a very primal way of communicating. Things like that. But that is a whole other thing to explore. But also we can say that familiarity bias. Words learned early, Old English, feel more natural. Eat, drink, walk, go, rain, coat, cold, hot. Simple words increase processing fluency, builds trust, likability, emotional resonance. It's like a range, really. If you're talking just ums and ahs, that kind of real primal guttural level of communication, versus really elegant, long flowing sentences, Latin-esque and even Shakespeare-esque, very elegant. But because of the elegance, it gets lost in communication as what you're saying. But then more in the middle would be the down-to-earth, likeable, easy, understandable words that a child could understand. Old English words. Again, trust. Oh, I know what he's saying. What do you want? That. Okay, here you go. Very nice. Old English words engage action circuits. Sensorimotor grounding. Down to earth, we could say. Latin-based words engage abstract reasoning circuits, prefrontal cortex, meaning that the more complex we can articulate a concept in as few words as possible, the better. Saves time practically, but we can just say, as a schema in psychology, we can say, for example, table. Rather than saying square wooden plank with 4 legs, we just say table. We can encompass complex ideas in a single word. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. We say that word as a schema, it unlocks our understanding and thoughts and deeper understanding of that word. As opposed to explaining ourselves in great detail, we just point to a word, say, right, we're going to talk about tables today. Okay, right. Interesting. But Old English words are rooted in everyday survival. Eat, run, fight, love, home. Nice. Latin words, more bureaucratic. Executive, implement, facilitate, acquire. Emotional writing. Sensory, favour sensory. Primal words. Again, you follow that logic from Latin into Old English to primal grunts, ums and ahs. Nice. Again, bypasses some primal, some defense mechanism inside us, and it's more universal. Again, even further to body language, that no sound and just gestures, very primal. Politicians, poet, advertisers default to Old English for impact because it's very down to earth wording. Fight on the beaches, no Latin abstractions. Down to earth, understandable, even to the point where we can imagine it, we can feel it, we can sense it. But that's going a bit poetic, but nonetheless. Old English words handle multiple contexts flexibly. Get, receive, obtain, buy, become, catch. Wow. Reduces need for precision if not required. Again, that Latin, it allows us to compress complex topics in simple ideas, but Old English is simpler, down to earth. Again, more direct. One simple word replaces Latinate synonyms. Get, obtain. Natural redundancy supports listener comprehension, meaning it's easy for people to understand what you said. Even that sentence itself, easy for people to understand or get. There's that synonym right there. Get what you said. What you said. One syllable each. Nice. So then we could say and go further to say that Old English is best for teaching beginners, marketing, public speeches, fiction dialogue, so fiction, emotions, emotional storytelling, leadership, and social media content. Especially in this international world we live in, it's more direct, it's powerful, it's a nice way to communicate. But Latin-based, precision, again, we can encompass complex ideas and thoughts and theories and ideas in a single word. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Anti, that's a Latin word, against. So legal precision, scientific specificity, academic writing, formal reports and technical documents. Makes sense. Yeah. So that's an interesting way of looking at it. And then other words, begin, start, commence, end, terminate, use, utilize, buy, purchase, get, obtain, help, assist, need, require, ask, inquire, tell, inform, find, discover, love, adore. Interesting. Interesting. All kinds of ways of looking at this and all kinds of words. Again, most English words have a Latin and an Old English origin word. Old English words often tied to physical reality, break the ice. In fact, I also noticed that they have a lot of phrasal verbs in them. So, build up, break down, walk into, keep your feet on the ground. Nice idiom there, realistic. The tide turned, change in circumstance. And that, what's the word for that? Kennings, I think it's called. Kennings. Things, what was it? Describing the word exactly. I can't remember now, but physical grounding makes language more vivid, memorable. We'll find them on the beaches. We can imagine it and visualize it. Metaphorical language, often used for primal experiences, stronger recall. Like the phrasal verbs. break down, walk into, build up, talk into. Preposition and verb. In, at, on, under, verb. Very nice. So all the English words align with fast, emotive, intuitive. And Latin, slow and analytical, rational. Powerful speakers would use both. Start simple and escalate complexity as needed. Makes sense. Yes. So that's interesting. And rule of thumb, shorter syllable, faster comprehension. One syllable, use, versus 3 syllables, utilize. Processing time is exponentially different depending on the number of syllables. Now, what's also very interesting is that people that tend to use simpler language, because I remember a study about people who swear a lot, tend to be trusted more. I think it had something primal where they're using this simple word again and again, and as opposed to trying to use more complex, elegant words to outsmart you, they're just very guttural and down to earth and direct. Simple language conveys honesty, confidence, directness, transparency, especially when the place that is very class conscious or class conscious, and finding ways to deliver, say, sarcasm or deadpan humor or self-deprecation is very powerful as an equalizing method, as a way to bring you down to earth to the people's level for building rapport, diplomacy, and attraction. And complex language, Latin, distances people, alienates people, distance, bureaucratic tone, lack of personal connection. There's no feeling, there's no heart in the word, because those words again are the English words, very down to earth based, very simplistic, quite powerful. Direct primal words convert better in sales. Get more done. Get more done. Optimize your operational productivity. One thing I've noticed with some places and shops in general is that they'll have a sign and they'll have really like 4-syllable long words and sounds very official and technical and exact. We have relocated. We've moved. We're here is a map. Our new location is thus, or our new location is below. Things like that. Location, here. Where we are. Where we are. 1 syllable. Nice. So then we could say that Old English is good for call to action buttons. Buy now. Click here. Headlines and punchlines. So it's interesting. It's an interesting little observation. Fewer words, faster thought. Simple syntax, short words, maximum cognitive efficiency. Yeah, nice. And just an interesting thing. Default English words, Old English words for clarity, speed, trust, emotion, universality, simplicity, and power. Latin words for nuance, formality, precision, and intellectual complexity. Nice. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. How you communicate is very powerful. And the choice of words is even more powerful. And I think to go even further with the ums and ahs, it's even more universal, more primal. Fundamentally, it depends on what your goals are, how you want to approach it, what reputation you want to build. But it's an interesting mechanism of communication and something to be aware of when communicating. But otherwise, Adrian's Daily Vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.